The pipa is a pear-shaped bowl lute originating from the Qin Dynasty of ancient China. It is traditionally made out of wood and usually has 12 to 31 frets built into the body of the instrument. It is a chordophone, with strings being plucked to produce sound. In China and abroad, the pipa is very popular, with Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese variations of the instrument. Among the pipa players of the present, Wu Man stands out as one of the world's best and an ambassador of Pipa and Chinese music as a whole. Wu Man learned the ins and outs of pipa at the Pudong School of Pipa playing in Shanghai. She also studied at the Central Conservatory of Music in Beijing under Lin Shicheng. Not only has she performed traditional pipa at the highest level, but she has also collaborated with a diverse set of musicians from different genres, such as ethnic music, electronic, jazz, and even Hawaiian. What's admirable about her journey through pipa is that after mastering traditional Chinese pipa music, she seeks out risky collaborations with ethnic minorities to shine light onto threatened musical traditions and the people who practice them. The name of the instrument, pipa, represents how the instrument is traditionally played. Pi means to strike outward with the right hand, and pa is to pluck inward toward the palm. The technique of striking and plucking is called tan tiao, which utilizes the index finger and thumb of one's right hand to strike and pluck, respectively. The left hand is used to manipulate the frets of the pipa. A pipa player can produce many musical effects, such as vibrato, glissando, and artificial harmonics. Furthermore, because the frets are elevated above the soundboard of the pipa, a skilled musician can create dramatic pitch-changing effects. Pipa players can also produce a percussive sound by hitting the soundboard or twist the strings of the instrument to create unique sound. Prior to the 10th century, pipa players would hold the instrument sideways, with the neck pointing down. However, as players' plucking and striking technique became more advanced, it became important that the pipa was held upright with the neck pointing upwards. In the following clip, we will see Wu Man playing a traditional pipa solo titled Fragment of the Qin Dynasty. Note her traditional playing style. She plucks and strikes the strings of the pipa with her right hand while masterfully controlling the pitch of each string with her left. She also makes sure to utilize a little bit of vibrato so that certain pitches are emphasized with an echoing and a shaking sound. At this point in her career, she has mastered the traditional pipa and seeks out a new perspective on pipa, one with a Western touch. A naturalized American citizen, she has incorporated music from the West in her pipa compositions. A group she has worked with, the Shanghai Quartet, aims to display Chinese folk songs with a Western touch. In this first clip, we see Wu Man playing a solo pipa piece titled Flute and Drum Music at Sunset. Note the traditional ornamentation of the music through the left hand. An example of the Shanghai Quartet and Wu Man's combination of Western music and traditional pipa music is in their performance of the Concerto for String Quartet and Pipa by Tan Dun. Initially, in this excerpt, we hear some interesting pitches that sound like a sort of evil spirit descending on the musicians. This illustrates the traditional roots that this music is composed with, because in Chinese culture, a lot of traditional music is all about scaring away bad spirits and bringing good luck. After the camera zooms out onto Wuman, we can see her playing the pipa, not in the traditional pluck and strike fashion, but in a way that looks like she's playing a guitar. Throughout the piece, Wuman switches between this way of playing the pipa and the tan-tiao technique. Additionally, the two violinists and cellist play with an interesting technique at one point in the piece. They begin to pluck and strike their violins and cellos respectively, quite similar to how the pipa is played. These unconventional methods of playing yield unique sounds from these instruments in terms of pitch effects and volume, not entirely traditional Chinese nor Western. After experimenting with applying Western music to the pipa, it would seem that Wuman has surpassed all traditional pipa playing and could possibly dive into combining pipa with Latin music, which she has, or even perhaps sabar drumming. However, she decides to look back to the roots of the pipa, around 2 millennia ago on the Great Plateaus of Xinjiang. In the early 2010s, Wuman collaborated with Sanobar Tursun and Abdullah Majnun, two Uyghur master musicians. The Uyghur people reside predominantly in Central Asia and in China in the Xinjiang province. An interesting point to bring up is that because of the tense relationship between ethnic minorities in China and Han China, this is the first time Uyghur and Han Chinese musicians have worked together in the modern era. In fact, Wuman herself was the catalyst for this collaboration, providing the finances and visiting Xinjiang to work with the Uyghur musicians. The instrument played by Abdullah Majnun in this clip is one of his own creation. He calls it the diltar, combining the tambur and satar into a double-necked lute. Many instruments in the Central Asian region are related to the pipa, and it's wonderful to see that new concepts and prototypes are still being created and worked on in the present. Wuman also played alongside Sanobar Tursun and her dutar. In the following clip, it can be heard that the pitch of the pipa is significantly lower to match that of Sanobar's dutar. Listening to this music is interesting because the pipa has close ties with Central Asia, as the pear-shaped design of the instrument originated from Central Asia around 2,000 years ago. However, there are cultural differences that separate the two instruments. For example, the pipa was a court instrument that received a lot of exposure during dynastical China, which allowed it to thrive and hold lots of impact through time. However, the extension of the pipa led to instruments played by minorities in China to dwindle in terms of global attention. It is true that locally Sanobar Tursun, for example, is popular and well known for her dutar playing, but until recently she was not known outside of Xinjiang. The sad part is that although she performed globally from 2014 to 2016, she seems to have disappeared for a period of time from 2018 to 2019 and is now based in Urumqi, Xinjiang province, with no apparent plans to display Uyghur music to the world. Throughout her career, Wuman has and continues to perform and interpret pipa music through traditional, Western, and unconventional lenses. From playing technique to composition style, she has truly come full circle and taken the pipa through its rich musical history, as well as applied it to modern-day Western music.